Anna, let's start on the grooming gang scandal, shall we, and the Casey report.
Yeah, I mean, this is a report which says, definitively there should be a national inquiry, which will probably not be news or anything new to your viewers.
No.
Because this channel is to be commended for saying consistently for months that we should have a national inquiry. And the fact that Keir Starmer had to commission yet another report that we've all paid for through our tax money to tell us things that we already knew, I think is absolutely disgraceful. He should have ordered this report 6 months ago. This is yet another monumental U-turn. It's a complete betrayal, in my opinion, of the victims who deserved this to happen earlier. And the fact that he banded people who were campaigning for this, people on a far-right bandwagon, is disgusting, because that is exactly the attitude of pushing things, refusing to actually look at all the details, covering things up, which has caused this problem in the first place. So frankly, I think he should resign.
David, should Sir Keir Starmer be in the country, or should he have been yesterday when this report dropped? I think Downing Street had it, how long, Anna? Maybe 10 days?
About 10 days ago.
Well, yes, people will say that. Obviously, G7 is a major international stage which he has to be on, and all world leaders are there. So I don't think he had much option in reality. But yes, it's a criticism that we levied at him. Why is he not here to take the flag? It always seems to be convenient that he's away when these things happen.
He scuttled off to the G7 and let this break, and so he didn't actually have to face the flag. They had this report 10 days ago. It was number 10 could have timed the release of this report on any day. Why on earth wasn't it released about 10 days ago?
Well, it's very convenient, isn't it? Very convenient. There's probably been timed for that.
Exactly.
And again, it always, when he makes these U-turns, it's always because of somebody else. So Louise Casey is the reason for this U-turn. It was the OBR which came out with some new economic figures, which was the reason for the U-turn on the winter fuel allowance. It's not us, Gov, it's somebody else who's given us some new information.
And sometimes it's something completely imaginary. I mean, the whole reason for having to raise taxes, which of course he said he wasn't going to do, was because of his imaginary black hole. So,
and I said to you both off air, actually, even people like Jeremy Corbyn, who politically I don't, particularly align with, to say the least, at least you know what he stands for. He stood for the same thing for many, many decades, same as Nigel Farage, same as President Donald Trump. They've got principles and they've got a vision in their mind. With the Prime Minister, I just feel like you don't know what he stands for, you don't know what he cares about, what he's authentic about. He flip-flops in the wind, and I think he plays politics very badly.
They say that a good Prime Minister is a signpost, tells the country where he's taking the country. A bad Prime Minister is a weather vane, and there's absolutely no doubt what Keir Starmer is. He is the biggest weather vane that we've seen.
It doesn't seem to have a guiding star. I mean, this is where we're aiming for. Prime Ministers like Tony Blair, come with me in this direction, this is where we're heading to. You don't seem to know what he stands for. Will Keir Starmer?
Well, he's guided by others, isn't he, as you say, the OBR or Baroness Casey or whoever's talking at the time.
Or whatever minority comes along that takes his fancy. Look about, taking the knee for the Black Lives Matter. When it came to trans women, rather than standing up for the women of this country, who are over half the population, he goes for a minority. He's a disaster, and the sooner he's gone, the better.
And let's start with that Casey report that was presented to Parliament yesterday, shall we? And lots of our viewers questioning the Tory record on this. We've known about this scandal, rumblings and rumours and whispers of this scandal since the early noughties, and many people saying the Tories didn't do enough. And looking at Kemi Badenoch yesterday at the PMQs and her outrage towards Sir Keir Starmer, pointing at the fact that she was MP for 8 years. In fact, she was Children's Minister and Women's Equality Minister. And not once did she call for a national inquiry until 2025.
I don't think that's an accurate reflection of all the things that we did do to try and get to grips with this issue. I'll use one example, the Grooming Gangs Task Force, which was a police Home Office funded initiative that has led to hundreds of the perpetrators of these kinds of offences being arrested, thousands of victims uncovered. Of course, one of the main driving forces for us to look into this more deeply was the J inquiry into child sexual abuse. That's an inquiry that we set up, that we funded and we supported. There is a whole range of other work that we've done done in relation to child sexual exploitation, violence against women and girls, that I think we can be proud of in government. And actually, one of the reasons why we've been calling for an inquiry and that we were disappointed it took so many times for Labour to get on board with the need for this was because we're open to the idea that we may need to go further, but that doesn't diminish the positive things that we did do in government, even if there is more still needs to be done.
Yeah, but Mr Mullen, you've only been calling for an inquiry when critics would argue it seems fashionable to do so. Your party were in power for 14 years, some of those with the Lib Dems, of course, but you didn't. The fact of the matter is, despite what you just said, you did the grooming gangs task force and whatever else, the fact of the matter is, not once did you call for a national inquiry during your time in power when it mattered.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of whatever else. I think things like arresting and investigating the perpetrators of these crimes, setting up the inquiry that led to, in a large way, the further demands for a national inquiry specifically into grooming gangs were very important and significant steps that were taken in the right
Minister,
direction.
Apologies.
And it's actually...
sorry to interrupt.
Those things were things that we did in government. And when it comes...
Victims during that time were calling for a national inquiry.
Sure. As I've said on a number of occasions, we set up the J inquiry, which was a broader look into child sexual abuse that uncovered further details and concerns around these allegations of grooming gangs, and that then naturally led to us thinking how we could go further, and we did do that in many respects. And actually, it's not about jumping on a bandwagon, it was about listening to, quite rightly, the calls from MPs, Conservative MPs included, like Robbie Moore in Bradford, for victims of these sorts of crimes who have said that we needed a national inquiry, and we got behind those calls for an inquiry in opposition. I think that's the perfectly reasonable thing to do, and the question is, why did Labour fight so hard against that?
Let's talk about the grooming gang scandal, shall we? And the findings of the Casey report that were presented to Parliament yesterday. What did you make of what you heard?
Well, it's a really odd one when you come on a show like this and you talk about the politics of something, generally speaking, because the politics of this, you almost feel cheap in a way, talking about the politics of this issue. I think, Casey, it's a very, very kind of direct, brave report. I think it's a disgrace that the Prime Minister needed, evidently, the political cover of this report to bring about this national inquiry. It's something he labelled people far right for calling for. I think that's just inexcusable.
Do you think we'll get an apology for that?
No chance, because what they're trying to say is that actually he was referring to politicians rather than the electorate. I think we all know that was not the tone of it whatsoever.
Well, it's his favourite insult, far right.
Yeah,
anyone concerned about migration, anyone concerned about little girls getting massacred, you're far right.
He rocks it out time and time again. The slight elephant in the room for me that I haven't seen a great deal of people talking about here is that in many ways this still actually isn't a national inquiry. And what I mean by that is that, and it's classic kind of Whitehall system protectionism still ongoing here, is that actually the inquiry will not look at Whitehall and successive central government's role in this. Yes, it will. So it's national in the sense that there's a national infrastructure and power behind it, but the microscope will not actually be on Whitehall and national government. And for me, I mean, and I know it's very easy for Whitehall to say, oh, well, it didn't filter up because of failings and neglect and worse at a local level. And yes, that was happening too. But I don't know, like, I want to see that microscope on Whitehall.